It's been a strange spring here on the West Cliff. There has been a chilly wind every day, but when the sun comes out, I'm beginning to see the regular visitors that I've come to recognise by sight. Those who come to walk under the trees and enjoy the sea view. Let's go in and make a cup of coffee and I'll tell you another tale from the cliff edge. Hello, I'm Peter John Cooper. The strange, clumsy old man and his son had been coming here to walk for years. One day he announced he had something surprising to tell me. Was it going to be a dark confession or some arcane mystery? I think the secret will surprise you as much as it did me. Today's story is called GreekComedy. It was the tree root that had buckled the smooth surface of the path that gave him away. I should have guessed. Every time he crossed it, he would stumble. Nothing odd about that, you might think. Every unsuspecting walker did it, but there was something faintly comical in the fact that it happened every time, as if his feet and legs had not quite learned how to surmount such an insignificant obstacle. The younger man would take his elbow and purse his lips as if slightly annoyed. I assumed they were father and son, the old man tall, gangling, the younger man smarter, stockier, lingering just a little behind. What you noticed at once, that there was a confident ungainliness about the way the old man walked, his head thrust forward, leading with his shoulders, his grey flannels too short and flapping above his ankles, which all went to make the sudden repeated clumsiness so risible. I had seen this ill-matched pair from time to time over the last 10 years, walking under the pines on the West Cliff. They could only be a father and son, the old man in a tweed jacket that hung on his bony frame as if a couple of sizes too large, and a tweed fishing hat that seemed a size too small. The younger man always neat in a knitted sweater and stay-pressed cords, probably a brief informal interlude away from a stuffy office somewhere. They were an incongruous pair, and I marvelled at the son's casual solicitude. If it was sunny, they would sit on a bench by the path, and the old man would get a newspaper out of his pocket and with an extravagant flourish smooth it across his lap before holding it up in front of his face. If the son said anything, the old man would fold the top of the paper down with his thumbs and peer over it to reply. And when the weather was hot, he would remove his hat and produce a large polka-dot handkerchief which he would lay over his face before lying back himself as if to sleep. The corner of the handkerchief would rise and fall with his breath. His actions were all strangely mannered. I didn't realise how long it was since they were last there until I noticed one day the older man supporting himself on a stick and the younger man standing closer, touching his sleeve tentatively and taking his arm more often as if to steady him. More recently still, the old man pushing a walking frame, and I was irresistibly reminded of the riddle of the Sphinx. The younger man walked a few paces in front as if clearing the way, while constantly stopping and turning back. But there would always be that stumble at the tree root, and the slight cloud of annoyance. It was one afternoon towards the end of the pandemic, when we were still hesitant about sharing space, that the old man sat down rather heavily at the end of the bench where I was sitting and writing in my notebook. My father, sorry, do you mind, whilst I get the car? I shrugged. The younger man walked quickly away. He worries too much. It's okay, no problem. Writer? He nodded to the notebook. Well, sort of. There was a brief silence. I'll tell you something. My heart sank. When you have a notebook and a biro, everyone wants to tell you their story. There's a guaranteed bestseller in this, they will say. You can make your fortune. And I'm always tempted to retort, well, why don't you spend a year or two of your own time writing it down, make your own fortune? Just listen, he said. Okay, was this going to be a confession? Do you remember when everything became serious? 2016. I woke up in the morning and drew back the curtains. All I could see were 3 crows, like bitterness, rancour, and hate, perched on the balcony opposite. The Eumenides strung out along the railing. I was too frightened to be funny anymore. Mad, but there was a sort of urgency in his voice that had my attention. My name was, it's not important now, my son would say we're in the entertainment industry. I hate that term. A bingo caller. Do you know anything about comedy? He lowered his voice, about how a clown goes about his business. I gritted my teeth. He had used the C word. The very idea of clowns made me shudder. They belonged in a damp, dismal undercroft to the world. Accountants and estate agents who spent wet Saturday afternoons twisting balloons at kiddies' parties with their lips smeared with their wife's lipstick. Or who plied a sad trade of threadbare, worn routines in a wind-shaken tent in the middle of a muddy football field. You know, it's all about expectation versus actuality. You see the banana skin on the pavement, you know the clown is going to slip on it. Hilarious, or what? Silly man. But the clown knows that a trap is waiting for him. He steps over the banana skin. You laugh. But just as he's feeling pleased with himself, he falls down the open manhole that neither of you spotted. The clown's job is to carry the world as it is, not as it should be, or you want it to be. Expectation versus outcome. Show business. It used to be important. It's just a commodity now. Look, I don't have much time. I wasn't sure whether he meant before his son came back or before he pegged out altogether. It looked as though it was going to be neck and neck anyway. And I haven't told this to anybody before. Oh my God. He's going to reveal his life as an undercover operative for MI6, infiltrating the big tops of Eastern Europe and gaining undercover intelligence from buxom Ukrainian lady trapeze artists. The young man, his minder, posing as his son, making sure those secrets go with him to the grave. On the other hand, it's amazing the fantasies that senility imposes on tired old brains. Nowadays, people want hard, bitter comedy, full of irony. You've seen that, haven't you? But irony belongs to tragedy, not comedy. Irony tells us what we already know, that the gods will defeat you and torture you, however good and innocent you are, because that is what the gods do. The clown is there to soak up some of that bad luck, to give you hope, to act as your proxy, to look at the world with innocent eyes, as though every day you are given a fresh start and everything is new and exciting, and that the gods are benign and caring. He obviously hadn't read any Thomas Hardy. I mean the writery one, not the other one. You might say 2016 was all about irony. And we had not seen it. None of us. We tripped blithely forward after the heady, hopeful days of the new century, and straight into the trap the gods had set for us. Euripides had told us to beware 2,500 years ago, and we had forgotten the warning. I surveyed his face in more detail. Nothing out of the ordinary. A crumpled, world-weary mass of lines and jowls. And worst of all, the very image of the clown has been hijacked by the fearmongers and hate-wielders. The clown itself is now a symbol of evil. How has that happened? How has the world become so dark and twisted that children are taught to look on a clown with fear? They are taught too young to suspect everything, not to believe that there can be such a thing as goodness and simplicity. The sun was beginning to set, and it was getting chilly. I must have looked uncomfortable. If there was a punchline, I hoped it was going to be worth it. One moment. He held up his hand. We'll get there in a moment. The two vital things we need in this world are clowning and science. Both need an entirely open, childish mind. Not come at things with prejudice. You try something, if it explodes and the wheels fall off, it is funny. Expectation dashed. But if it works, you have left a gift for the whole world. A silver trumpet, magic from your pocket to produce a wonderful, melancholy music. A bunch of roses from your sleeve. Expectation realized. Scientists and clowns, both children, both full of wonder and questions. My son never saw that. He was much more interested in the business side of things. Important, of course. He does whatever it is he does in an office somewhere. He made sure we were comfortable. But he never understood what I did, what it meant to me. He grew up too quickly. He saw through the tricks and trips, and it held no wonder for him. I mean, he is kind, open-minded as you can be in this world, but secretly he is embarrassed and ashamed. I was puzzled that the old man didn't see the irony in what he had just said. "You must be getting cold," I said. He shrugged. Some clowns deliberately emphasize the childishness of their worldview, borrowing emotion from somewhere else, from the blue remembered hills of childhood, nostalgia rolling down to envelop us like mist on a summer's day. Pathetic, eh? I cringed. I couldn't bear it if all he was leading up to was some plea for sympathy. How sad clowns were under the smiley makeup, always with a tear in their eye, performing their funny routines while their hearts were breaking. Well, I thought, there's a lot of people in this world who are worse off. Get over it. Instead, I said, "And so you stopped clowning after you saw the crowd? And so you stopped clowning after you saw the crows?" I didn't want to be pathetic. But there was one last hurrah. I was invited to be part of a huge production of a Greek tragedy. It was one of those surprise bits of casting that grabs a few headlines. I was to play Tiresias, the old man with woman's breasts. Lots of improvised business there, I can tell you. A swan song in a way. Over his shoulder I could see the son making his way back with a blanket over his arm. "Come on, Dad." Here's the important bit. On the opening night of the Bacchae, the wardrobe mistress brought my costume round to my dressing room. One of the bits of biz I'd put in, I'd torn a large hole in my pants. It had happened before and she was annoyed. "I'm not putting up with it anymore. If it happens again..." "Come on, you'll catch your death." The young man placed the blanket round the old man's shoulders. "My father, he hasn't been worrying you, has he?" But he wasn't listening for my answer. He was looking at the old man, guiding him, one hand on his back, the other steadying the old man's Zimmer. The old man glanced back at me and raised an eyebrow. She said, he paused, "If it happens again, you rip these trousers, humanity's trousers." And as he walked, one of his feet seemed to hook itself round the back of the other. He stumbled and lurched forward as if he might fall. The son put his arm round him. "Oh, Dad, when are you going to grow up?" I'd like to say that as the car drew away, there was a bang, a puff of blue smoke, and the doors and wheels fell off. But they didn't. It doesn't happen like that in this grown-up world, does it? Thanks for listening to that tale from the cliff edge. Are you afraid of clowns? Do you appreciate their important work? Tell me what you think about them, and I'll have another tale from the cliff edge, same time next week. If you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this story, do let me know, and I will send a clown round as soon as You rip these trousers, humanity's trousers. Today's story is called Classical Comedy.